What is going on, guys? Shooting Dave here. So good to see your faces. Welcome back to the channel. Now, if you're new here and you don't know what I'm about, I am at Shooting Dave, a photographer from London that now lives in LA, and I make photo and video editing tutorials. So, if that sounds something you're interested in, please do consider subscribing. Okay, so today's video is making the CCTV effect inside DaVinci Resolve. A super simple and straightforward tutorial, so hopefully I can teach you guys a little bit about it. So just before we jump into that, I want to explain why I decided to do it and why I came up with this idea. In my previous video, I was light painting cars in the area. Now, these weren't arranged photo shoots, I didn't have permission to do it, and I thought it'd be kind of fun to make it like voyeuristic and have a CCTV as if the owner of the car is watching me from the comfort of their own home. And also, the GoPro that I was filming is terrible, so I was like, well, how can I harness this footage? Well, that terribleness I can lean into. We can make it a CCTV effect because it's kind of grainy and at night. So that's exactly what we're going to do. So without wasting any more time, let's jump into DaVinci Resolve and let's walk through this. Okay, so now we're in DaVinci Resolve, and now I've got the clip that I want on my timeline. You can use anything that you think is necessary. I decided to have footage of me light painting the car, but as I say, this can be anything that you want to do, so just trim it down to the level that you want, and you can see above it I've got this adjustment layer on top called CCTV, but you can call it whatever you want. But if you don't know how to create an adjustment clip, come up to Effects Library, it's under Effects, and you see adjustment clip here, and just drag that down onto your timeline and adjust it to fit. So that's what we're going to be adjusting. We're not actually going to be adjusting the clip itself, we're just going to be using the adjustment clip to put all of our adjustments on. That's a lot of adjustments, I know, but trust me, it makes sense, and that way you can take all of those adjustments off if you just want that clip to be as normal underneath rather than affecting that clip itself. Okay, so once that's done, we're going to jump straight into our color tab, and then you can see all of the nodes that I have lined up next to our clip. I did this in stages, that way I could play it back and see how that effect is working and whether I like it. So the first thing I did is I googled CCTV footage at night, and a lot of it was black and white. So the first thing I wanted to do was desaturate the image. So to add a node in there, or a serial node, select your first node and hit Alt or Option with S, and that will create a serial node for you. So let's activate this first serial node, and all that's doing is desaturating the image. And all I did for that was just come down here to the bottom under the color wheels and drag down the saturation to 0. Now the next thing I wanted to do was add some sort of CCTV effect. I was picturing this camera being an older type and the sensor being kind of rubbish, so I wanted to add some sort of breakup in there, maybe some lines, so that was what I did. Another serial node, Alt or Option S, and then we got the CCTV effect. And what I did is I came up here to the Open Effects tab, and under the search I type in scan lines to bring up our scanline effect. So let's have a look at the settings that we use for this. I really wanted to dial down the amount of frequency in there. So if we resort this back to how it is, you can see these bars are really large and invasive, and I didn't really want that, so I wanted it nice and fine, barely noticeable, and really, really subtle. So I dropped them down to 15. I also came down here and I changed our overlay mode into a compositing type into overlay, and I changed the blend amount as well. So these are the settings I used to get those scanline effects, and that was looking pretty good as I played through. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with how that's looking. Alright, so back to the beginning. I liked the fact that we've got this kind of line effect going across it. I wanted to add something a bit more, so maybe the sensor's coping pretty badly in low light, so I wanted it to flicker a little bit. So another serial node, Alt or Option S, and I typed in flicker addition. So if we enable this one and play it through, this is what it's doing. Now it's very, very, very subtle. It's just kind of pulsing the image a little bit. And I thought that's pretty cool. By default, it's much slower than that. So these are the settings I used. I dropped the range down to 0.2, so it's not really like making large jumps. And I also increased the speed quite a bit as well, because I wanted it to happen very frequently rather than just easing in and easing out. So that was what I was liking. And now we kind of nailed at this stage the kind of rubbish sensor look, and I kind of wanted to focus on the lensing of the imaginary CCTV camera that I'm using. So I added another node, and this time I put in light rays. So if we click on light rays here, these are basically the settings I used. Pretty much straightforward. All I did was play with position and on the X and the Y axis a little bit. So if we play through, you can just see it's taking the brightest areas of the image and kind of just like blasting it out through the lens. So if we play through, it's going to slow down your computer quite a bit. But yeah, it's kind of acting like there's light emanating out and kind of flaring across the lens, which I kind of like. I thought it's quite good, but you don't have to use this one if you don't like it. The image is looking pretty clean at this stage, and I thought, well, we need to add a little bit more breakup, so I added a JPEG damage effect, and this just really kind of introduces some more artifacts into the image to really hammer home that grainy old CCTV effect. So yeah, these are my settings here. It's just, if you can't find it, go to Open Effects, type in JPEG damage and just drag that onto your node, and that's what you get. And the last one that we have here, black and white was looking really quite cool, but I wanted it to be sort of pseudo night vision look, so I thought I'd add a green tint to the image. So as you can see here, it's color generator. It looks pretty cool, but it's just in the corners. Now in order to do that, I came over to power window and selected the elliptical mask and just kind of dragged it into position and dragged out the feather and then inverted it, so that way it gives just a little bit of a green tint into the corners but keeps the center of the image saturated. Now this one's completely subjective. You can use it if you want to, you don't have to, but yeah, that's what I did. And that's basically all we did inside the color tab in order to make this CCTV effect. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with how it's looking so far, but how can we make it look a little bit better? Well, we could probably add some text overlays on there, maybe the date, maybe the type of camera that we're using, or something like that. So come up to Effects Library, under Titles, hit Text, and then we'll drag this onto a timeline, and just make sure it's the same length as our clip. Come to the beginning, and let's call this Exterior Cam 01. Let's change the font to something a bit more suitable. Let's go with Arial, see how that looks. Yeah, and I don't like to use pure white text because it kind of stands out, it's a bit jarring. So I'm going to come to the color here, and I'm just going to take out some of that brightness a little bit so it falls back a little bit more. Size, we'll probably drop that down to about 50, I think, and then we're going to bottom and left justify it, zero it out. The exterior cam. Alright, so that's looking pretty good, but what else could we add in there? Well, normally CCTVs have some sort of time code on there, so let's add something like that. Now, if you've not seen how to create time code, there's a video up here, but for the purpose of this tutorial, I'm going to go over it again. So, just underneath titles, there's text plus, and we're going to drag that over our clip and make sure it's the same length. We're going to get rid of title, we're going to right click in here and go time code. So this is going to give us frames, seconds, minutes, and then hours. But we don't want all of that, so I'm going to drop off frames, so we get rid of that. Ooh, make sure we keep seconds. And then I'm going to falsify this a bit as well. So the only bit I really want is the seconds part of it. So I'm just going to take that off there. Okay, so we've got seconds. And this way, as we scroll through the timeline, it's going to change the seconds, which looks pretty cool. But we want, like, say let's make up a time. So let's say this is like 10 past 8 or something like that. So I'm just going to drag this above, and then I'm going to go in here and unkey it 20 and then 10. So it's 10 past 8 in the evening in 24-hour clock. But we need to add back this part, and then we need to take off that bit here, so drag it until it all fits. There we go. Okay, so then I'm going to select both of these, new compound clip, whatever, call it whatever we want, and then I'm going to change the size of this to 0.5, no, even smaller, 0.3, something like that, and then you can play around with its position. So I'm going to go 540, 10 minus 540, and this one's going to be 960, and then we'll reposition a little bit. So let's drag this up, something like that, and then we'll move it over this way, like that. Now obviously you can play around with whatever font you want to use. I'm just doing this for demonstration purposes. So as we scrub through, you can see like it's like the clock is actually running. So that's how you could add like a little clock. And of course you can add like the little record symbol. You could add some overlays on top of all of this as well. But yeah, basically that's how you create a CCTV effect, and that's how I used it to create the intro to this video, and also the CCTV effect over the light painted images that we were creating. But yeah, you can add anything you want. Record symbols, save frames, dates, timestamps, camera names, whatever you want. It's super easy, but that is how I created the CCTV effect. So if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. Got any comments or questions, let me know down below. If you haven't already, please do subscribe. And if you could follow me on Instagram, I am @ShootingDave. And as always guys, I shall see you in the next one. See ya.